Hello and welcome not to the workshop this time but to the study, where I'll do a little book review and probably come of no surprise. The book is Chassepot to FAMAS by Ian McCollum, French Miniature Rifles 1866 to 2016 by Headstamp Publishing. Now this came through my letterbox a few months ago when it was launched to great fanfare. I jumped aboard, of course, as soon as it was announced on Kickstarter, and it was a good long wait until it came through the letterbox, but in the end I'm glad that they didn't rush it and they made sure everything was just right. The editing and the printing quality was perfect before they sent it out. So well worth the wait. Now, why did I get this book? I mean, I can have luckily access to the excellent French literature on the subject, but nonetheless I've still added this to my reference collection. Three reasons for that. Firstly, the quality of the pictures is simply stunning. Which you cannot find in the French literature. Although the information available is excellent, the picture quality is unrivaled, frankly. For example, here's a nice RSC showing you all the relevant details, so the important details. The firearms are taken apart. There's a good overview of each breakdown of each of the models. And frankly, I don't have that in my collection. The French ones tend to be the same pictures recycled from the 1970s, tiny black and white things, grainy, horrible. So if I really wanted to find detailed pictures, I'd have to go onto forums and find someone who's actually taken a picture of theirs for a close-up of something. Now, the other point is that it's actually refreshing to see a viewpoint of someone who is aficionado, but nonetheless is coming from, let's say, another culture almost. So the US gun culture, his appreciation of the firearms. So just a change, and interesting to see his point of view, especially considering all the firearms he's looked at in the Forgotten Weapons series. And thirdly, even though the information which I'll come to has different levels of detail, overall for me this is an excellent quick reference guide. So if I'm talking to somebody, I can quickly pull this out and show a particular model very, very quickly, or a detail. Also, the annexes are very, very useful. If I want to decipher, for example, the serial number script, which is not obvious for me. It's all summarized in one table. Then there's also some details about the stamps you'll see on barrels or actions, about the inspectors from the different national arsenals, unit markings when they were relevant, and for those who are not used to how to do things, there's a disassembly of the various bolts, which is also very, very handy. So for me, this quick reference guide is excellent. When I read through this cover to cover, no surprise, since we're now in May 2020, so I've had a good amount of time to do this, and I realized that in fact this book has two levels. So you can use it, as I said, as a quick reference guide, and whether you're a seasoned collector or you just want a good overview of firearms within this period of all the major powers, if you've got a nice reference library, this is great. This will do exactly what it needs. The information is on the first level, quick to access. The essentials of the model when it came out, and the different breakdown of the models, carbines, rifles, etc. But if you take the time, there's also plenty of information that will probably satisfy the said seasoned collector. There's all sorts of anecdotes which are very, very interesting, even some that I haven't found in the French literature that I have. Also the breakdown of the formation and sadly eventual closure of all the national arsenals is in there. There's a page dedicated to each, and that's quite interesting and difficult to condense, actually, because you have to think about it. Some of them started under royal what should I say, royal sanction, and then went to Republican, then there was revolutions, then there was war, then there was occupation, post-war nationalizations, and it's a quite interesting history. Obviously, it's very, very, very condensed, but interesting nonetheless. So yeah, I think here there's something for almost everyone. Now I say almost because this book will not satisfy the die-hard rivet counter. You know, the one who wants to know why the first name of the firstborn of the controller of Saint-Étienne in 1946 had an influence on the steel modification of the barrels of the second model Mass 36. You know, maybe it did, but that kind of information, that level of information is not in here. And frankly, it's also not really accessible in the French literature. And part of that is because the information is still partly classified. So yes, that's, you know, the diehard might be feeling that there's something a bit missing in the book. Now, on that note, this book really covers the mainline sort of line infantry firearms. So what your basic squaddie or cavalryman would have had. So it does not go into details about all the emergency firearms that were purchased, for example, in the 1870-71 war, in World War I, and in the more modern case, all the specialist firearms used by individual special forces, the Marine commandos, that kind of thing. Those are not in there. It's really what your basic infantryman and cavalryman would have had. And so that's to the technical content. However, there's one thing which this book provides, which I'm very, very grateful that Ian took obviously a lot of time to do, and that is to bring context to French firearms development. So very often, and partly due to the lack of information, very often misunderstood and frankly looked down upon as inferior, because the context for all the perhaps sometimes unusual and silly decisions that were made is not available and unexplained. And frankly, in that time period, so mid 19th century up to, well, let's say up to post-World War II, French firearms development was plagued by having to make rash decisions or fast decisions. If you think back to even the Chassepot was not exactly what started out as a normal trials and testing had to be rushed. Political interference rushed the Lebel. The Gras was okay, but Berthier was also, you know, there's a war going on, we need to get something out quickly. Even the FAMAS deployment was a bit cut short, and they had to get an interim firearm before it was really ready to deploy to all the troops. So yeah, there was, without this context, you get this misconception of, you know, of French firearms development, and this context is given for each of the major technical engineering changes that were made as the arms progressed. So that is a really good bonus for actually the firearms community, the English-speaking firearms community. So I think I've probably waxed lyrical enough. There's perhaps two little points that I want to address on the negative side, if I may. That is, as to the content, there are a couple of pages devoted to the Daudotot and Dovitis rifles, which are very interesting in their own right, but don't really belong to the family of rifles that this volume covers. Perhaps in their stead, I would have liked to have a little more details about the MAS 1939/40 semi-auto trials. Obviously, it's not a mainline issued firearm, but in the book you get a fairly sharp transition between the MAS 36 and MAS 44, and I think, I don't know, maybe a page or half a page of a summary of the semi-auto trials and development, and and then suddenly World War II, which puts a stopper in the whole development. MAS 40 is just mentioned very, very briefly. The information is there, even in English. Jean Huon's book, Proud Promise, deals with it. So obviously not suggesting that the content would be paraphrased in there, but the information is there to interpret and could have been integrated in the book. And the second firearm is the MAS 45, which was a 2.2 bolt action trainer, which was used quite extensively, and it's got an interesting history as well. Initially a Mauser design that was taken up and exploited in Saint-Étienne. That's, quite a lot were produced, and since we have information already on the Gras Scolaire and the MAS 36 2.2 system, it would be nice to have that included as well. But there we go. You have to make some choices, and that's with that. And I have one more thing, but that's purely personal, because I consider firearms more from a engineering perspective. The chapters are ordered like Ian's episodes, so intro, where the firearm comes from, inventors, etc., and then come the markings. When he says let's have a closer look, he goes to the markings, which are important. For me, they're more decorative. I like to get into the actual engineering and how the system works. So in the book, there's, as I said, it's structured like an episode. So just when you're ready, you've explained what it is, who made it, where it comes from, you're just ready to dive into what it is, and the markings come. And so you have to flick through or skip a chapter until you get to really the good stuff for me. But that's personal. And I am not going to comment on why those choices were made. It is what it is, and it's still very pleasant to read. So there we go. That's my overview on the book. So as I said, it's something for the casual collector, something for the French gun nut, and even something for the French gun nut. So thank you for watching, and bye.